He fell through a bus door on purpose. He waited for the second ring on purpose. And now, 6 days after their courthouse wedding, she's about to find out everything about the man she married was a choice, including the part where his family runs Seoul's largest crime syndicate. Before we get into it, subscribe so you don't miss stories like this. Like and comment if you remember the watermelon bag from part 1. Okay, let's go back to that black car. That black car didn't move. It just sat there. Engine off. No one getting out. No one explaining themselves. Just a man standing on the pavement looking up at her window like he had been sent to deliver information that nobody was going to enjoy receiving. Chisholm on the video call said, "Ada, you've gone quiet. That's never good." Adaeze said, "There's a man outside." "What kind of man?" "The kind that makes you feel like you've done something wrong even when you haven't." "Ada." Chisholm. "Call Jae-won. I'm looking at this man." "Ada, stop looking at the man and call your husband. He's not technically the man you married in a Lagos courthouse 6 days ago. Ada, call him." The man outside looked up at her window one more time. Then he got back in the black car. The car pulled away. Smoothly. No rush. The way things move when they are not afraid of being seen. Adaeze sat very still on the heated floor with her fish bread going cold beside her. Then she called Jae-won. He picked up on the second ring. Always the second ring. She had clocked it every single time and she had thought it was tender. She was now wondering if it was tactical. "Ada, there was a man outside my guest house," she said. No preamble, no softening. Black car. He looked up at my window. He left. Silence. Not the processing kind. A different kind. The kind that already knows something. Jae-won. "I'm coming. You haven't asked me to describe him. I'm coming, Ada. That means you know who it was. Stay inside. Don't open the door for anyone. I'll be there in Kim Jae-won." She said it the full way. All 3 names. "You have 30 seconds to tell me something true before I pack my watermelon bag and go back to Lagos." A beat. Then he said, "Not on the phone." "That," she said slowly, "is not reassuring." 20 minutes, he said. "Please." She looked at the door. She looked at the window. She looked at her fish bread. She picked it up and took a bite because she handled stress by eating, and right now her stress levels were requiring a significant caloric response. 20 minutes, she said. "I'm timing you." He arrived in 17. She opened the door before he could knock because she had been watching from the window and she was not going to pretend otherwise. He came in and he looked at her with that careful look. The one she now understood was not just composure, but armor, and she crossed her arms and waited. He sat down on the edge of the bed. She stayed standing. In her experience, the person standing in a difficult conversation had a slight advantage, and she was keeping every advantage she had. He said, "My family runs more than a company." She said, "Okay." He said, "The Kim Group has business interests that are not listed on any public document." She said, "Okay." He said, "Some of those interests require a certain kind of management." She said, "Jae-won, I am Igbo. I have uncles who do business in ways that don't get discussed at Christmas. Please stop dancing around it and say the thing." He looked at her, and then he said it. Plainly, without decoration, the way she had asked. "My family controls the largest private syndicate in Seoul. We have for 3 generations. What most people call organized crime, my family calls legacy." The room was very quiet. The heated floor hummed gently beneath them. Adaeze unfolded her arms, folded them again. Then she said, "Say that again." "My family. No, I heard you the first time. I'm just giving myself a moment." She held up one finger. She walked to the window. She looked at the street. She walked back. "Okay," she said. "Okay. You're telling me that the man who fell through the door of a Danfo bus in Lagos traffic, who couldn't navigate Balogun Market, who apologized to his suya." "I wasn't apologizing." "Who texted me, that looks delicious like a Victorian gentleman. That man is the heir to a criminal empire. I prefer... Jae-won. Yes. She sat down on the floor. Not on the bed. The floor, because the floor was heated and she needed to feel something warm and grounding immediately. She sat there for a moment. He watched her. She said, "Who was the man outside?" "Someone who works for a rival family. The Shin family. They've been watching me since I came back from Lagos." "Why?" "Because I went somewhere they didn't sanction, and I came back with someone they didn't expect. Me. You. They sent someone to look at me. They sent someone to assess you." "Assess me," she repeated, "like I'm a risk. Like you might be leverage." That word landed differently than the others. She felt it in her chest. She looked up at him. "Is that what I am? To them?" He met her eyes without flinching. "To them, not to me." "Jae-won, you are never leverage to me, Ada." Very quiet, very direct. No decoration on that one either. "You are the reason I'm having this conversation instead of continuing to not have it. You deserved to know. You still deserve to know everything." She sat with that. Then she said, "Does your mother know about the man outside?" "She called me before you did." Adaeze stared at him. "Kim Soon-hee called you. She has people who watch the neighborhood. She saw the car. Your mother has people. My mother runs the administrative side of the syndicate. She has for 20 years. Adaeze put her face in her hands, took a breath, lifted her head. "The woman who made japchae." "Yes." "Who said I made good John and she wanted me back next week." "Yes." "She's running a criminal empire." "She would say she's managing a legacy." "Jae-won, I need you to stop using the word legacy right now." He stopped. She looked at the ceiling. Then she said something in Igbo that was not repeatable in polite company. Then she said, "Okay, I need to think. Give me 10 minutes." He sat quietly. He was very good at sitting quietly. She had noticed this from the Danfo bus, the ability to simply be still and not fill silence with noise. She had admired it. She now understood it had been trained into him by a life that required a great deal of stillness in dangerous rooms. She thought about the 2 weeks in Lagos, the way he described his work in fluid, vague terms, the way he had people who answered his calls before the second ring while he always waited for it, the way at the company dinner photos she'd seen online, the men around him watched rooms the way soldiers watched terrain. She had noticed all of these things. She had filed them. She had chosen at the time not to press, because she had been raised to know when not to ask questions. But she had not been raised to be afraid. She said, "What happens now?" He said, "That depends on what you decide." "What are my options?" He was quiet for a moment. "You can go home. I'll make sure you're safe getting out. The Shin family won't touch someone leaving. There's no value in it. And if I go home, then I continue the way I was continuing before Lagos, and you live your life, and we pretend the Danfo bus was just a bus." She looked at him. "And what's the second option?" "You stay, and you know everything, and I protect you, and we build something real. Building something real with the heir to Seoul's most dangerous syndicate. Yes, that's the option you're offering me. That's the truth I'm offering you. What you do with it is yours." Adaeze Okonkwo sat on the heated floor of a guest house in Mapo-gu, Seoul, South Korea, in December, with her watermelon carry-on in the corner and her cold fish bread beside her, and she thought about everything. She thought about the Danfo bus, about the way he got up off that floor with quiet dignity and sat next to her like it was the most natural thing. About 47 minutes in traffic that changed the direction of her life. About Bologan Market and suya eaten off newspaper and a man who smiled slowly and crookedly, and only when he meant it. About a flight she booked alone because something in her already knew. About a grandmother who woke up at 6 to make galbi jim for a stranger. About Jae-won and her research board. About Kim Soon-hee looking at her and saying brave or foolish and hoping it was the former. About a man who waited for the second ring, who noticed she switched to her left hand when she was tired. Who said you were it from me like it was a fact he had known for long enough that stating it was just reporting. She said, I have conditions. He went very still. I am not a secret. Not to anyone. Not the Shin family. Not the business world. Not your family's people. I am Adaeze Okonkwo and I am your wife, and that is not a thing that gets hidden or managed. Are we clear? Clear. I'm also not a decoration. I'm not sitting in a house somewhere being kept safe while you make decisions that affect my life without me in the room. If I am in this, I am in this. Ada, I'm not finished. She held up a finger. My business is my business. Nobody from your world touches it, controls it, uses it, or benefits from it. It stays clean. That is non-negotiable. Non-negotiable, he agreed. And the man in the black car, I want to know what he reported back, and I want to know who made the decision to send him, and I want to know what your plan is for the Shin family situation, fully and completely, not in the vague fluid language you use when you're editing yourself. He looked at her for a long time. You noticed that? Jae-won, I noticed everything. I just waited for you to be ready. Something moved across his face. Not quite surprise. More like recognition, like he had suspected she was this person and was now having it confirmed. He said, When did you know something was off? The first time you described your work, she said. Import and export is what people say when they want to be understood without being understood. I know that language. I grew up around it. She paused. I didn't press because I trusted that you would tell me when it was real. And here you are, telling me. He stood up from the bed. He came and sat on the floor in front of her, which she had not expected, and she was not expecting his face at the same level as hers, and she was especially not expecting the look on it, which was the most unguarded she had ever seen him. He said, I should have told you in Lagos. Yes. I was afraid you would leave. I almost did just now. I know, but I didn't. I know. She leaned forward and put her hand on the side of his face, and he closed his eyes for exactly 2 seconds, the way someone closes their eyes when they receive something they needed and didn't know how to ask for. She said, I'm not going anywhere, but you have to stop editing yourself, all of it, from now. He opened his eyes. All of it. Every single thing. He said, that is going to be a very long conversation. I have time, she said. I didn't pack for 2 weeks. I packed for possibilities. He almost smiled. I remember. So talk, she said, from the beginning. Tell me everything. And he did. He talked for 3 hours. She sat on that heated floor and she listened the way he had taught her a person could be listened to, fully, without interruption, with space for the difficult parts. He told her about his grandfather who had built the first version of the Kim network in the chaos after the Korean War, who had decided that in a country rebuilding itself, the people who controlled the supply lines controlled everything. He told her about his father who had grown it, carefully, who had understood that the cleanest criminal enterprise was one that looked indistinguishable from a legitimate one. He told her about what the Kim group actually controlled now, the logistics routes, the silent stakes in legitimate businesses, the relationships with people in government and law enforcement that weren't corruption exactly but were proximity, the kind of closeness that created obligations on both sides. He told her about the Shin family. Older rivals, a different philosophy. Where the Kim family operated with discipline and structure, the Shins operated with aggression. They expanded by force. They had been trying to move into territories the Kim family considered protected for 2 years. The black car outside was not a random check. It was a message. The Shins knew Jae-won had come back from Lagos with a weakness, with someone he cared about, and they had sent a man to look at her so she would know that they knew. They wanted me scared, she said. Yes. Well, she looked at her cold fish bread. They sent the wrong car to the wrong window. He said, Ada, I'm not being reckless. I'm being accurate. She looked at him. What is your plan for them? He told her. She listened. She asked questions that surprised him because they were not emotional questions. They were strategic ones about timing and leverage and public exposure. The kind of questions her father had taught her to ask about difficult business situations, the kind her years building a textile business in Lagos had sharpened. He answered each one. She asked more. He recalibrated. At one point he stopped and just looked at her. What? She said. You would have been very good at this, he said. This world. I'm good at every world I decide to enter, she said. That is not specific to yours. He nodded slowly. I'm beginning to understand that. Beginning, she said. Jae-won, you're genuinely a slow learner. I'm thorough, he said. That's what slow learners say. He did that thing where he almost smiled and looked at the wall. She had decided this was one of her favorite things about him. The wall smile. The way he deflected amusement like he needed a second to make sure it was real before he let it show. Later that evening, he took her somewhere she hadn't been. Not a restaurant or a landmark. A rooftop. Not the tourist kind. A private one, accessible by a staircase at the back of a building in Yongsan-gu that seemed ordinary until you were standing at the top and the whole city was laid out below you like it had been arranged specifically for this moment. Seoul in December at night, all light and cold air and the mountains dark at the edges. She stood at the railing and breathed it in. He stood beside her. They were quiet for a moment, the comfortable kind now, not the weighted kind. She said, Is this yours? My family's. Of course it is. She looked at him. Do you have a list somewhere, a spreadsheet? Things that are your family's that I'm going to find out about gradually? There might be a list. Jae-won. It's a short list. Is it though? He said carefully. It depends on how you define short. She turned back to the city, shook her head, laughed quietly to herself. He watched her. He said, Are you okay? Genuinely. She thought about it honestly. I am a woman standing on a rooftop in Seoul in December next to her husband who is the heir to a criminal dynasty, having found this out approximately 6 hours after finding out his mother approves of my Jean technique. So, she considered, I'm not okay in the conventional sense, but I am okay in the Adaeze sense, which is to say I've assessed the situation, I know what I'm doing, and I'm not afraid. He said, The Adaeze sense. New unit of measurement, we're using it now. He was quiet for a moment. Then he said, I need to tell you one more thing. She looked at him. Tonight has been a lot of things, Jae-won. I know. I've processed approximately 3 years of information in 6 hours. I know. Whatever this is, it needs to be the last thing. It's not bad. Famous last words. He reached into his jacket pocket. She watched him, wary because pockets in this man's jacket had already produced a ring and an evening of revelation, and she was no longer making assumptions about what might be in there. He produced a small folded piece of paper. He held it out. She took it, unfolded it. It was a receipt from the Lagos courthouse, their courthouse wedding, 6 days ago. She looked at it, then at him. You carried this. I've had it since the morning. Jae-won, we were married 6 days ago. Why do you have the receipt in your pocket? He said, Because on the rooftop in Lekki you said yes like it was simple, and on the morning in the courthouse you signed like it was certain, and I wanted to keep something from that day close because I was going to tell you the truth and I didn't know what would happen after. She looked at him. The city was behind him, all that light, Seoul doing what Seoul did without asking anyone's permission. He was standing there with his sharp face and his careful eyes and his three-generation criminal legacy and his genuine inability to eat suya with any confidence, and he had carried a courthouse receipt in his jacket like a person who understood that some pieces of paper were not paperwork but proof. She folded it back up. She put it in her own pocket. "For safekeeping," she said. He looked at her pocket, then at her. Something in his face settled into something she recognized as the truest version of relief. She said, "Okay, the Shin family. Walk me through the timeline again, the part about the logistics routes." He blinked. "Right now. I told you, if I'm in this, I'm in this. I'm not decorative, Kim Jae-won. Start talking." He stared at her for a moment. Then he said, "You know most people in your position would need more time. I am not most people. I know. You knew that in the Danfo bus. I knew it before the Danfo bus. I fell through the door on purpose." She turned to look at him fully. "I knew it," she breathed. "I knew it. That door was wide open. No one falls through an open door." He said nothing. He looked at the city. "Kim Jae-won, you staged a fall in a Danfo bus. I saw you through the window. You were fanning yourself with a Mr. Biggs receipt and eating chin-chin, and you looked like the most interesting person on 3rd Mainland Bridge. So you fell. I assessed my options, and I fell. That is both the most romantic and most unhinged thing you have ever told me. I've told you I run a criminal empire tonight. This is worse," she said. "This is deliberate public embarrassment for a woman." It worked. It absolutely worked, and that is deeply irritating. He smiled. The real one, the slow, crooked one from the suya chair. She thought, yes, this is still it. Mafia and all. 3-generation legacy and all. Kim Soon-hee's japchae and Ji-yeon's research board, and a grandmother who woke up at 6. And a man who carries courthouse receipts and stages falls. In Danfo buses for women who eat chin-chin like they were raised by joy. She said, "Jae-won, Ada, if anything happens to me because of the Shin family, I want you to know that I will haunt you. Specifically, not vaguely. I will haunt every room you walk into and every meeting you try to conduct, and I will be loudest when you are trying to be quiet and strategic." He said, "Nothing is going to happen to you." "I know, I'm just setting expectations." "Understood." "Good." She turned back to the city. "Now, the logistics routes. Go." He talked. She listened. The city sprawled below them and the mountains held the edges, and December in Seoul was cold in a way that was completely different from any cold she had known, and she thought, "I'm going to learn this city. I'm going to learn this language and these streets and this cold and this man and his family's complicated, dangerous, loving, galbi gym-making world. And it is going to be the most interesting thing I have ever done." She said, interrupting him mid-sentence, "I'm going to learn Korean." He stopped. "Okay. Properly, not 47 videos. A tutor. Full immersion. I'll find you someone. Someone who won't treat me like a foreigner who is trying. Someone who will treat you like a person who is learning." "Correct," she nodded. "Continue." He continued. Now, the Shin family situation. It moved faster than Jae-won had planned, which he told Adaeze 3 weeks later when she had settled into the apartment he had set up for her. Not the guest house anymore, an actual apartment in Yongsan-gu with a kitchen and a workspace and heated floors throughout, because he had learned that she treated heated floors as a basic human right, and he was not going to argue with that. And she had started Korean lessons with a woman named Teacher Oh, who was 62 years old, relentlessly patient, and had decided within the first lesson that Adaeze was her best student in 6 years. The Shin family made their move on a Wednesday. Not violent. Not yet. Strategic. They went to 2 of the Kim family's legitimate business partners and made competing offers, better ones, with terms that only made sense if you understood they were buying influence, not product. It was a message. We can reach inside your world. We can peel things away. Jae-won told Adaeze on Wednesday evening. She was sitting at the kitchen table with her Korean workbook and a bowl of ramyeon she had made herself, which she had gotten genuinely good at. She listened. She asked questions. Then she said, "Who are the partners they approached?" He told her. She said, "Do either of them have any African market exposure?" He looked at her. "What?" "African market. Nigeria specifically. Import-export of fabric and textiles. Either of them." "One of them. SEO Logistics. They have a West African freight route." She tapped her pen on the table. "I know a woman in Lagos who has been looking for a Korean logistics partner for 2 years, a proper one with clean documentation. She's been unable to find a trustworthy option." She looked at him. If SEO Logistics becomes that option, they gain access to a market the Shins cannot offer. Not in the next 5 years. The Shin family has no West African relationships. He was quiet. Then, "Ada, I'm not getting involved in your syndicate business," she said quickly. "I'm connecting a Lagos businesswoman with a Korean logistics company. Legitimately, cleanly, through my own professional network. What SEO Logistics decides to do with that relationship regarding their other partnerships is their own business." He looked at her for a long moment. She went back to her Korean workbook. "I told you I'm not decorative." He picked up his phone. He called someone. He spoke in Korean for 3 minutes. He hung up. He said, "SEO Logistics would like your contacts information." She wrote it down on a piece of paper, slid it across the table without looking up from her workbook. He picked it up. He stood there for a moment looking at this woman eating ramyeon and studying Korean vocabulary with the focused intensity of someone who had decided to absorb a country whole, and he felt something in his chest that he had no efficient word for, but that the grandmother, if asked, would have described simply as right. He said, "감사합니다." She said without looking up, "당신은 천천히 배우고 있어요." "You are learning slowly." He stared. "You knew how to say that." "Teacher O taught me useful sentences first." She turned a page. "Go handle your business." He went. The Shin family's approach to SEO Logistics did not land the way they expected it to. A company that suddenly has a new high-value West African freight relationship, clean and growing, does not need to be purchased. The math changed. SEO Logistics declined the Shin offer, politely, firmly, with the energy of a company that has just remembered it has options. Word moved the way it moved in that world, quietly and fast. 2 weeks after that, Kim Soon-hee called Adaeze, directly, not through Jae-won, to her own phone. Adaeze picked up and said, "안녕하세요," very carefully, because Teacher O had told her this was how you begin. Kim Soon-hee said, in English that was more precise than it was accented, "Your Jean is still the issue. Saturday, 11 o'clock, I'll teach you." Adaeze said, "I'll be there." Kim Soon-hee hung up. Adaeze sat for a moment, then she texted Chisholm, "Jae-won's mother is teaching me to make John on Saturday." Chisholm replied in 40 seconds, "Ada, the Mafia mother is cooking with you." Adaeze replied, "I prefer Legacy Mother." Chisholm replied, "Adaeze." She put her phone down. She went back to her Korean workbook. She had 17 new vocabulary words to learn before Saturday, and she was not going to show up to Kim Soon-hee's kitchen underprepared. Saturday was extraordinary. Not because it was dramatic, because it wasn't. Kim Soon-hee's kitchen on a Saturday morning was ordinary in the way of kitchens that have fed people for decades. Warm, specific. The kind of organized that tells you something about the person who runs it. Soon-hee worked with precision, and she expected the same from whoever was beside her, and she did not explain herself twice, which Adaeze actually respected because she was also a person who did not explain herself twice. Soon-hee showed her the John technique once. Adaeze watched. She tried. She got it mostly right. Soon-hee adjusted one thing without comment. Adaeze adjusted. She got it right. Soon-hee said, in Korean, something brief. Adaeze looked at her. "천천히 말씀해 주세요." Please speak slowly. Teacher O, always useful. Soon-hee said it again, slower. Adaeze understood approximately half of it, but the half she understood included the word for good. She decided to accept the whole sentence on the strength of that word. They cooked together for 2 hours. Jae-won appeared at some point and sat at the kitchen counter and watched them with the expression of someone witnessing something they wanted to remember. The grandmother came in, took one jeon from the plate without asking, ate it, nodded at Adaeze, and left. The father walked through, saw Adaeze at the stove in his wife's kitchen, looked at nothing in particular for a moment, and said something to Adaeze. She looked at him. He repeated it slowly. She understood it. He had said, "Welcome." She bowed. He nodded. He left. She kept cooking. At some point, while they were both standing at the stove, Soon-hee said in careful English, "My son, he is different since Lagos." Adaeze said, "Different how?" "Less." She paused, looking for the word. "Managed." Adaeze said, "You mean more himself?" Soon-hee looked at her. Then she said, "Yes, more himself." A beat. "It has been a long time." Adaeze flipped the jeon. She said, "He told me everything." "I know. He told me he told you." "And?" Soon-hee was quiet for a moment. "I told him to tell you, a long time ago, before Lagos. I told him that whoever he chose, she needed to know, because a woman who doesn't know what she's standing in cannot stand in it properly." She paused. He listened, slowly. "He's thorough," Adaeze said. Soon-hee made a sound that was not quite a laugh, but was its relative. "He says that." "I've heard." They were quiet for a moment, just the sound of cooking and the smell of jeon filling the kitchen. Then Adaeze said, "The Shin family." Soon-hee said, "Yes. They won't stop." "No." "What does Jae-won plan to do?" Soon-hee looked at her sideways. Assessing. Then she said, "You ask directly. You said a woman who doesn't know what she's standing in cannot stand properly. I'm trying to stand properly." A beat. Then Soon-hee said, "The Shin family has a weakness. They have expanded aggressively. Fast expansion leaves gaps. Jae-won has been identifying those gaps for 8 months. When the time is right, they won't be fought. They will be made irrelevant." Adaeze said, "Made irrelevant by what?" "By structure, by relationships, by the kind of quiet work that doesn't announce itself." Soon-hee paused. "The kind you helped with?" "CO Logistics." Adaeze said, "I connected a businesswoman with a freight company." Soon-hee said, "I know what you did, and I know how you did it. Clean, smart, no fingerprints." Adaeze flipped the jeon, said nothing. Soon-hee said, "You could have used it differently. There are women who would have used it as currency, as a way in, as leverage over my son." Adaeze looked at her. "I'm not interested in leverage over your son. I'm interested in my husband being safe and my business staying clean." Kim Soon-hee looked at her for a moment. Then she said, "Jeon is ready." They plated it. They sat down. They ate. And Kim Soon-hee said, in Korean, something short and clear, and Adaeze caught enough of it this time to understand. She had said, "You'll do." From Kim Soon-hee, Adaeze had come to understand. That was the full standing ovation, the whole stadium on their feet. She took a piece of jeon and ate it, and did not show on her face what she was feeling, because she was also, it turned out, learning to be a person who did not show everything in a room where showing everything was not strategic. Teacher O would have been proud. The Shin family's move came 6 weeks later. Not violence. Something they thought would be worse. A journalist. A story. Carefully sourced, strategically placed, about the Kim family's business interests. Names, connections, the kind of article that, once published, changes the air in a room. Jae-won called Adaeze on a Monday morning. The Shin family found a journalist. She was at her desk in the apartment going through fabric samples from a supplier in Gwangmyeong. She set one down. What kind of journalist? Investigative. The story is already written. They're planning to publish Friday. What's in it? He told her. She listened. She said, Who's the journalist? He gave a name. She said, I need an hour. Ada. 1 hour, Jae-won. She hung up. She called Chisholm. Chisholm said, It's 6 in the morning in Lagos. I know. Wake up. I need you to find me someone. Chisholm woke up. Because it was Adaeze. You woke up for Adaeze. Who? The journalist is about to publish a story that was written for him by people who want to use it as a weapon. He may not know that, or he may know and not care. Either way, I need someone who can make him care. A senior editor, a media ethics board contact, someone with standing in Korean press who can ask the right questions about sourcing before Friday. Chisholm said, You want to stop the story. I want the story to be accurate. If he publishes what the Shin family gave him without knowing where it came from or why, that's not journalism. That's a delivery service. I want him to know the difference before he decides. Chisholm was quiet. Then, you know if this gets back to you, it becomes its own story. It won't get back to me. You know someone who knows someone. Find me the link. Chisholm called her back in 40 minutes. There was a link, a media ethics professor at Yonsei University who had trained half of Seoul's senior editorial staff and who had opinions about sourced pieces that were agenda-driven. One call from him to the right editor, and the publication would sit on the story long enough to ask questions, long enough for it to fall apart under scrutiny. Adaeze gave the information to Jae-won, not as leverage, not as currency, as a clean, untraceable option that didn't require his family to do anything they would later need to manage. He sat with it. He said, You built that in 40 minutes. I built it in 6 years of knowing the right people for the right reasons. He said, The story won't run. She said, It might still run, but it'll run smaller and slower, and with questions attached to it that the Shin family didn't plan for. The story ran on Saturday, not Friday. 3 paragraphs were pulled. 2 sources were questioned in an editor's note. It landed softly. Not the bomb the Shin family had designed. A pebble, the kind you step over. The Shin family understood what had happened. They just couldn't prove it. 2 months later, 3 of the Shin family's major partners quietly began restructuring their arrangements. The gaps Jae-won had been mapping for 8 months started closing. Not with force, with offers, better terms, clean relationships. The Kim family had spent decades building the kind of reliability that the Shins could never buy, only approximate, and approximations are always visible to the people with the sharpest eyes. By spring, the Shin family was not defeated, but they were contained. And containment, Jae-won explained to Adaeze on a Tuesday evening while she was reviewing his explanation with the focused attention of someone cross-referencing notes, was in this world the same as winning. She said, I want to understand the full structure before I accept that. He said, I have charts. She said, You have charts. My mother makes charts. Kim Soon-hee makes organizational charts for the syndicate. She colors them. Adaeze stared at him. She colors them. Blue for legitimate holdings, red for sensitive relationships, yellow for ongoing negotiations. Jae-won, your mother color codes the crime. She would say, Legacy, yes I know, give me the charts. He gave her the charts. She studied them for a long time. She asked questions. He answered. She asked more. He got his mother on a call. Adaeze and Soon-hee discussed two specific columns for 20 minutes, while Jae-won sat between them saying very little, which was the appropriate behavior for a man who had created this situation and was now watching it resolve itself in ways he had not fully anticipated. When the call ended, Adaeze said, "Your mother is extraordinarily organized." He said, "She would be pleased to hear that." "Tell her I said so. She'll invite you to cook again." "Good. Her doenjang jjigae technique is something I need to learn, and I'm not too proud to admit it." He looked at her. She was cross-legged on the apartment sofa with Soon-hee's color-coded syndicate charts spread around her and her Korean vocabulary cards on the armrest and her fabric samples on the coffee table and her Lagos business contacts on her laptop, and she was fully, completely, occupying every inch of the life she was building in this city. He thought about a yellow Danfo bus, about a man making a calculation and falling through a door, about everything that had fallen into place since. He said, "Ada." She didn't look up. "I love you." She looked up, she looked at him, then she said, "Say that again." "I love you." In Korean. He paused. "Saranghae." She held his eyes for a moment, then she said, "Saranghaeyo." Back to him. Formal register, Teacher O's voice in her head. Pleased, he said, "You've been practicing that." "I've been practicing everything," she said. "I told you, I'm not going anywhere." He came and sat beside her on the sofa, in the middle of all her charts and cards and fabric samples and the enormous ongoing project of her life, and she leaned into him the way you lean into someone when you have decided, fully and completely, that they are where you rest. He put his arm around her without thinking, without ceremony, just the natural weight of it, and outside the apartment, Seoul was doing what it did, loud and organized, and not asking anyone's permission. She said, "Jae-won texted me." "What did she want?" "She wants me to come over on Saturday. She has purchased a full set of natural hair products, and she wants to learn the technique directly. She described it as a practical workshop." He said, "She sent you an agenda." "A 3-page one with a supply list. That girl has organizational genes." "She gets it from my mother." "The whole family gets it from your mother." She looked at the color-coded charts, including apparently the syndicate filing system. He said, "Are you going?" "Saturday," she said. "Obviously. I told her to also invite the grandmother. I want to teach her how to make chin-chin." He went quiet for a moment. "You're going to teach my grandmother to make Nigerian snacks. She fed me galbi jim the first time I walked into that house. I owe her something." A pause. "Also, she's delightful. She took a Jae-won off the plate without asking and just left. That is icon behavior." He laughed. The full one, the rare one that she had decided was her favorite sound, a very competitive category that also included heated floor sounds and Teacher O saying excellent, and the specific noise the Pojang Matcha grandmother made when she approved of something, but this was still first place, this laugh, this man. She folded the charts. She stacked her vocabulary cards. She closed her laptop. She turned to him and said, "Jae-won. Ada, I need you to know something. Tell me. When I booked that flight to Seoul, that cold December morning, I didn't know what I was coming to. I just knew I was coming." She looked at him. "And everything that was here, your family, your world, your color-coded charts, your grandmother, your sister, and her research board, Kim Soon-hee and her John and her good, all of it is harder and stranger and more complicated than anything I planned for. I know. And I would book it again," she said, "every time. Same flight, same watermelon bag, same absolutely zero plan." He looked at her for a long moment, then he said, "You know what you are." "What?" "Brave," he said, "not foolish." "Brave," she smiled, slow and real. "Your mother said that." "My mother was right. She usually is." She picked up her vocabulary cards. "Now, quiz me." I have 30 new words and Teacher O said if I don't retain them by Monday, she's going to make me write them out 5 times each. Teacher. O sounds strict. Teacher O is perfect. She held out the cards. Go. He took them. He looked at the first one. He said the English. She said the Korean. He moved to the next. She got it. And the next. She got it again. And somewhere in the middle of a vocabulary quiz on a spring evening in a Yongsan-gu apartment, with the Shin family contained, and the grandmother's chin-chin lesson pending and the color-coded charts folded neatly on the table and 3 generations of complicated legacy sitting quietly in the background, Adaeze Okonkwo studied her new language and felt completely, entirely, at home. Outside, Seoul held everything she was becoming, and it was, in every possible sense, just the beginning. That is where we end it. For real. For good. The full circle closed. If you have been here from episode 1, from the Danfo bus, from 3rd Mainland Bridge, from the Chin Chin and the Suya and the Incheon Airport and the John lesson and all of it, I need you to drop a comment right now and tell me the moment this story got you. The exact moment. The Danfo fall, the courthouse receipt in his jacket, Kim Soon-hee's color-coded charts. Tell me. And if this is your first time on Love, Lies and Fate Afro-Korean stories, first of all, welcome. Second of all, go watch part 1 immediately because you are missing context that is going to change the entire experience of everything you just watched. The link is in the description. Subscribe, turn on notifications for more stories like this. Share this with the person in your life who needs a love story that is romantic and ridiculous as this. Daumeboyo. See you next time.